China just crossed a threshold that every American who cares about the future of technology needs to understand right now, because for the first time in history, a fully functional AI-powered female humanoid robot is arriving on the consumer market at a price point that sits somewhere in the neighborhood of $1,300 to $1,500, not $15,000, not $50,000, around $1,400. That is less than what most people spend on a used iPhone and a year of streaming subscriptions combined, and it represents a seismic break from everything the Western robotics industry told us was possible even 3 years ago. This is not a prototype locked behind glass at a trade show. This is not a lab demonstration for university researchers. This is a product, on a shelf, aimed at ordinary people, and it is coming out of China. In this video, we are going to dive deep into how China got here, what this extraordinarily low price actually means, how Beijing engineered a supply chain that makes this possible while Washington was busy arguing over committee hearings, and exactly why every single technology executive in the United States should be paying very close attention to what just happened in the global humanoid robot race. Welcome to Chinese Revolution. It is now mid-2026. And the global race for embodied artificial intelligence AI that does not just think but physically moves through the world, picks up objects, opens doors, and adapts to changing environments, has reached a genuine tipping point. As an analyst tracking these massive international developments, it is clear that the landscape of robotics is undergoing one of the most profound structural shifts we have seen since the invention of the automobile assembly line. The numbers are stark. The momentum is real, and the implications for American workers, American companies, and American strategic interests are enormous. So let us start at the very beginning of this story, because to understand how a female AI humanoid robot arrives at a price tag of around $1,400 in 2026, you have to understand the extraordinary journey that got us here. Not long ago, and we are talking about less than a decade, the idea of owning a humanoid robot, a machine that walks on 2 legs, uses its hands, and responds to spoken commands, was pure science fiction for anyone outside of a well-funded defense contractor or a major university. Boston Dynamics was building its Atlas robot, and it was an engineering marvel, but the cost was well into the hundreds of thousands of dollars, and it was never intended for a consumer. Japan's Honda had a Simo, which had been under development for decades and could barely carry a tray without falling. The general consensus across the Western technology establishment was that practical, affordable, general-purpose humanoid robots were at minimum 15 to 20 years away. That consensus turned out to be wrong. It turned out to be wrong because it failed to account for what China was quietly building in the background. Here is the pivot point. Here is the moment that the story changed. Around 2015, Beijing made a calculated strategic decision through what became known as the Made in China 2025 program. The Chinese government flagged robotics as a national industrial priority. Initially, as analysts at TechCrunch noted earlier this year, this policy was focused primarily on factory automation rather than humanoid machines specifically. But the downstream consequence of that decision was the construction of the deepest, most vertically integrated manufacturing supply chain for robotic components anywhere on Earth. Actuators, sensors, batteries, rare earth magnets, circuit boards, servo motors, all of it built domestically, at scale, and at cost structures no Western competitor could match. Then something else happened that multiplied the effect dramatically. China became the world leader in electric vehicles, and the supply chain for EVs turned out to overlap with the supply chain for robots in almost every critical component: batteries, motors, power management systems, sensor arrays. As the EV industry analyst Selena Xu, of the office of Eric Schmidt, put it in a February 2026 report published by TechCrunch, China built the world's strongest manufacturing base, allowing companies to iterate far faster than Western competitors. That iteration speed is everything in a technology race like this one, and the numbers prove it. According to data from the Global Times published just 1 month ago, humanoid robots in China that once cost hundreds of thousands of yuan have now entered what they describe as the 10,000 yuan range, equivalent to roughly $1,400 to $1,500, depending on the exchange rate at the time. That is a collapse in price, so extreme, it requires comparison to make it land properly. Think about what $1,500 means to an ordinary American family. It is less than a month of car payments on a mid-range pickup truck. It is roughly what you would spend on 2 months of groceries for a family of 4. It is the cost of a used laptop and a weekend vacation. That is now the entry point for a functional AI robot with humanoid form. Now, let us be precise about what you are actually getting at that price tier, because this is where the story gets genuinely interesting, and also where we need to be careful about exactly what the technology can and cannot do as of mid-2026. The Chinese robotics landscape in 2026 is not a single product. It is an entire ecosystem. According to China's Ministry of Industry and Information Technology, in 2025 alone, China counted more than 140 domestic humanoid robot manufacturers and released more than 330 distinct humanoid models. 140 manufacturers, 330 models. That is not a product category. That is an industry. And the competition between all of those players is what has driven prices to a floor that Western manufacturers simply cannot touch. At the upper end of this rapidly expanding market, you have machines like Moya, a lifelike female humanoid companion robot produced by the Chinese firm DroidUp, priced at around $173,000 and engineered with biomimetic features that include simulated body heat and extraordinarily realistic silicone skin. Moya is not a mass-market product, but she represents where the technology ceiling currently sits in China, and it is astonishing. Coming down the price ladder, you have the Unitree Robotics G1. Unitree is a company founded by Wang Xingxing in 2016 and based in Hangzhou, China. The G1 starts at around $16,000 in its base configuration. It stands approximately 4 feet and 2 inches tall. It weighs around 77 pounds. It has 23 to 43 degrees of freedom depending on the model configuration, meaning it can move its joints through a range that in the most capable version actually exceeds the natural flexibility of a human body. It walks at roughly 4.5 miles per hour and can carry objects, navigate obstacles, and perform manipulation tasks. Most importantly, as of March 2026, Unitree open-sourced a vision language action model called Unifolum VLA-0 that allows the G1 to receive natural language commands and execute household tasks autonomously. In plain English, you can tell this robot what to do in spoken English, and it figures out how to do it physically. Unitree shipped over 5,500 G1 units in 2025 and is targeting between 10,000 and 20,000 shipments in 2026 alone. That company is also the only profitable humanoid robotics firm in the world right now, according to reporting compiled by botinfo.ai. Then below the G1, moving down into territory that starts to directly threaten the consumer mass market, you have Unitree's own R1 platform, which the company launched in July 2025 at a price between $4,900 and $5,900, a price point that Time magazine named one of its best inventions of 2025 because analysts had said that price was years away from being achievable. And below that, Unitree's R1 modular lineup has expanded to platforms starting at just $4,290. And then there are the sub-$2,000 models. Models in that range, around $1,200 to $1,500, represent the truly unprecedented development that the title of this video is pointing to. These are not full bipedal walkers with dexterous hands. To be clear and honest with you, at this price point, what you are typically getting is a humanoid form companion AI, a robot with a female form factor, genuine conversational AI capability, some limited physical interaction capability, and in the most advanced configurations, features designed specifically for elder care, personal assistance, and social companionship use cases. The Global Times report from May 2026 confirmed this price tier entering the consumer market, and IDC projected that China's educational companion robot market alone would exceed $1 billion in 2026. Think about what a market like that means for an aging population. And here is where this story connects directly to something that affects every single American family. The United States right now has more than 54 million Americans aged 65 and older. That number is climbing every year. The cost of professional elder care, a home health aide, an assisted living facility, a memory care center, ranges from roughly $4,000 to $12,000 per month, depending on where you live. A companion robot at $1,400 that can hold a conversation, remind a loved one to take their medication, detect a fall, call for help, and provide consistent social engagement is not a luxury product. It is a solution to one of the most painful and expensive problems that ordinary American families face. And right now, that solution is being built in China. Not in Michigan, not in Texas, not in Silicon Valley. In Hangzhou and Shenzhen and Shanghai, while Washington bureaucrats have spent the last decade holding hearings about AI ethics and passing frameworks that mostly manage to regulate paperwork, Beijing has already deployed the infrastructure to flood every corner of this technology. That is not an exaggeration. According to Time magazine's April 2026 report on China's physical AI dominance, in 2025 China accounted for over 80% of global humanoid robot installations. Meanwhile, cities across China, including Beijing, Wuhan, and Shanghai, are actively opening dedicated training facilities where robots practice specific tasks and harvest real-world data to improve their AI systems. They are building robot training centers, the way we used to build car plants. That is the scale of the commitment. What do you think about a future where a $1,400 AI robot could help your aging parents stay in their own home longer? Have you ever had to make the painful decision about moving a loved one into a care facility because daily help became too expensive? Share your personal experiences and thoughts in the comment section right below, because this is not an abstract geopolitical discussion. For a lot of families watching this video, this technology has a direct real-world connection to something they are living right now. Now, I know some of you might be thinking about stepping away from the video here because you have heard big promises about robots before, and to be fair, those Chinese humanoids from 2025 stumbled and fell at their own marathon. But trust me, you want to stay, because what comes next is the strategic picture that explains why this time is genuinely different and why the data on market share and manufacturing advantage points toward a trajectory that is not going to reverse. Because here is the key thing that separates what China is doing in robotics from what it has done in other technology sectors. This is not just a price war. This is a data war. And China has figured out something that most American analysts in Washington are still not fully grappling with. As Time magazine explained, in their April 2026 analysis, the country that deploys robots faster collects more real-world operational data, and that data is what trains the AI systems that make the next generation of robots smarter and more capable. It is a feedback loop with a compounding advantage. Every Unitree G1 operating in a Chinese factory is generating training data. Every companion robot in a Chinese elder care facility is learning from human interaction. Every humanoid at a Chinese Spring Festival gala, and on February 16th of 2026, hundreds of millions of Chinese households watched as robots from 4 different Chinese companies performed martial arts, parkour, and comedy skits on national television. Every one of those public deployments is feeding a data ecosystem that American companies can barely compete with yet. According to reporting from Rest of World, published in February 2026, nearly 90% of all humanoid robots sold globally in 2025 were Chinese, and 6 of the highest-selling companies in the entire sector were Chinese. By comparison, the United States accounted for roughly 13% of global humanoid robot installations, 13% versus over 80%. If those numbers were flipped, if American companies held 80% of the global robotics market, it would be the lead story on every news network in the country. The fundamental hardware advantage comes from something that the Barclays head of thematic FICC research, Zornitsa Todorova, described to CNBC as a nearly vertically integrated robotics value chain, from the rare earths and high-performance magnets to the physical components and the batteries. Think about what vertically integrated means in practice. An American robotics startup that wants to build a humanoid robot in 2026 has to source its servo motors, its sensors, its battery cells, its actuators, and most of its precision components from China. Even Tesla's Optimus program, which has been under development for over 5 years, still relies on components sourced largely from the Chinese supply chain. According to Morgan Stanley's analysis of the humanoid robot market, nearly every robot developer in the world still requires critical components sourced from China and other parts of Asia. Our own companies are building their robots on top of Chinese industrial infrastructure. That is the strategic reality that Washington has not yet found a serious answer to. Now let us talk about where we actually stand with the technology itself, because this is where the picture gets more nuanced and any honest analysis has to give you both sides. China's rapid scaling is real. The price drops are real. The manufacturing dominance is real. But as analysts have noted, including researchers at the Merix think tank and reporters at TechCrunch, the software side of China's humanoid robots is still catching up to the hardware. The challenge that every robotics company in the world faces, not just Chinese ones, is what researchers call the data scarcity problem. Training a humanoid robot's AI brain to handle unpredictable real-world environments requires enormous quantities of high-quality real-world operational data that you simply cannot scrape off the internet. You have to physically collect it, which is slow and expensive. And as one analyst quoted by TechCrunch put it, "The hardware is currently ahead of the software. The robot bodies can do extraordinary things. The robot brains are still learning to match that physical capability." That gap is important for 2 reasons. First, it represents a genuine opening for American companies. The United States leads in advanced AI simulation platforms, and firms like Tesla, Figure AI, and Physical Intelligence are pursuing software breakthroughs that could, in principle, leapfrog Chinese competitors whose advantage is currently more in hardware volume than in AI sophistication. Second, however, it explains precisely why China's strategy of flooding the market with deployed robots is so strategically smart. The faster they get robots into real-world environments, the faster they close that software gap. Every hour a Unitree G1 spends in a real factory or a real home is an hour of training data that no amount of lab simulation can fully replicate. According to RBC Capital Markets' March 2026 analysis of the humanoid robot opportunity, the global market is projected to reach approximately $9 trillion by 2050. $9 trillion. For comparison, that is roughly 4 times the size of the entire U.S. federal budget in 2025. And RBC estimated that China is positioned to capture roughly 61% of that market, based on its current government support, manufacturing infrastructure, and technology adoption rates. Morgan Stanley's own estimate, published in their report on the humanoid robot market, puts China at the top of the global deployment charts by 2050, with approximately 302 million humanoid robots in operation, compared to roughly 77 million in the United States. Think about what 300 million robots means for Chinese manufacturing productivity. Think about what it means for the labor cost advantage that already makes Chinese factories competitive with ours. Then think about what it means for our manufacturing workers, our supply chains, and our domestic industries, if that projection comes anywhere close to accurate. The numbers are not just big, they are civilization-altering. Beijing's investment in getting to that future has been enormous and coordinated in a way that our patchwork of private venture capital and intermittent government R&D spending simply has not matched. According to data reported by Yahoo Finance's October 2025 market analysis, China's robotics sector saw over 610 investment deals, totaling 50 billion yuan, roughly $7 billion, in just the first 9 months of 2025 alone. That represented a 250% increase year-over-year in a single year. While our manufacturers were navigating tariff uncertainty and regulatory ambiguity, Chinese companies were completing investment deal after investment deal, building production capacity, training AI models, and dropping prices. Beijing also launched a formal national policy framework called the Robot Plus Initiative, alongside an AI and manufacturing roadmap that explicitly targets building humanoid robot pilot production lines and doubling China's manufacturing robot density by 2030. Shanghai alone published a dedicated action plan for the development of the embodied intelligence industry, covering the years 2025 through 2028. And China's central government officially listed embodied AI as a top new industry track in its 15th five-year plan, covering 2026 through 2030. This is not a startup betting on a technology trend. This is a nation-state committing its industrial apparatus to owning a technology category, the same playbook that drove China's lead in solar panels, in lithium-ion batteries, and in electric vehicles. And that last one, the EV parallel, is the one that should keep every legacy technology executive in America awake at night, because we have seen this movie before. China entered the global EV market at a cost and scale that the Detroit establishment insisted was impossible, and within a decade, it became the dominant force in the global electric vehicle industry. As analysts at Rest of World described it in February 2026, the humanoid robot trajectory is replicating the playbook that drove its electric vehicle success: the same government support, the same public investment, the same mature supply chain, the same rapid iteration, the same collapsing price curve. While Washington debated, Beijing built. While Washington debated, Beijing built. That phrase applies to EVs, it applies to solar, it applies to batteries and 5G infrastructure. And right now, in the year 2026, it applies to humanoid robots with disturbing precision. What is the answer for the United States? The honest truth is that there are real pathways to competition, but they require a level of commitment and coordination that Washington has not yet demonstrated in this sector. The U.S. leads in advanced AI software. We have serious players. Boston Dynamics, still one of the world's most capable robotics engineering organizations, despite being absorbed into the Hyundai corporate family. We have Figure AI. We have physical intelligence, backed by some of the deepest AI talent in the world. And we have Tesla's Optimus program, which Elon Musk, to his credit, has described with unusual candor, publicly acknowledging at the World Economic Forum that China is very good at AI, very good at manufacturing, and will definitely be the toughest competition for Tesla. That kind of honesty from a competitor is worth noting. But honest acknowledgement and a coherent national strategy are two different things. The future of humanoid robotics will likely be defined by a powerful tension between American software innovation and Chinese manufacturing dominance, and the outcome of that tension over the next decade will have consequences that ripple through our labor markets, our manufacturing base, our elder care system, and ultimately, our strategic position in the world. If American companies can build the better AI brain and find a way to bring hardware costs under control, or to partner with manufacturing infrastructure that can deliver at Chinese price points without giving away the strategic store, there is still a race to be run. But every quarter that passes without a serious coordinated response is a quarter in which Chinese companies are shipping more robots, collecting more data, dropping prices further, and locking in the kind of market position that is extraordinarily difficult to dislodge once it is established. The recurring thesis of this entire analysis comes down to a simple, brutal truth. While Washington debated, Beijing built. And at $1,400 for a consumer AI humanoid robot, Beijing has now built something that is heading directly toward American living rooms, American eldercare facilities, and American factories at a price point that no domestic competitor is currently prepared to match. Which of these developments concerns you more, the speed at which Chinese robots are entering the consumer market, or the fact that our own manufacturers are still dependent on Chinese supply chains to build competitive machines? And do you believe the United States can close the manufacturing gap in humanoid robotics before the window of competitive opportunity closes in the next 5 years? If you found value in this deep analytical breakdown, please remember to hit that thumbs up button, share this video with someone who follows the US-China technology race, and subscribe to the channel so you never miss another exclusive look into how global technology is reshaping the world around us. Thank you for watching, and we will see you in the next analysis.